Good evening, everyone. We'll just wait a couple of seconds to allow people to file in. So good evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands we are on today. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, First Nations people that call this land home. As you know, an annual refresher in computer security awareness training is now mandatory for all Air Cadet League employees and volunteers that have a League business email account or have access to a League office network, whether it's at the national or provincial or even local level. Cybercrime is on the rise, and as an organization, we need to do what we can to protect ourselves. And providing this kind of cybersecurity awareness training to our members is a good place to start. So I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Kim Edwards of K2E Security, who has kindly agreed to provide this training to us. Kim is a former Air Cadet from the small town of Englehart, Ontario. He graduated as an electrical engineer from Royal Military College of Canada in 1991 and followed that up with a master's degree in electrical engineering, specializing in cryptography at Queen's University. Kim started his own company, K2E Security, in 2008. His company provides various professional consulting services in information and network security, and his clients range from nonprofit organizations to private firms, utility companies, and the federal government. So before I turn over to Kim, just an administrative question or point. I'll be monitoring the Q&A, so feel free to post a written question there, and I'll pass those on to Kim. Or if you wish, you can click the raise hand icon, and that'll send a message to me that you want to ask your question verbally, and I'll be happy to bring you forward so you can do that. So without further ado, over to you, Kim.
Thanks. Welcome, everyone, to the cybersecurity awareness training session. Been doing this for a few years, and it's my pleasure to come and share some of this knowledge with you guys and try to hopefully make you more secure and more vigilant on the network. So what are the objectives? There's two things right here. You want to protect your sensitive data. And sensitive data means a lot of things, right? Banking information, personal information, especially for cadets, right? You're dealing with younger people, minors. There's a lot of sensitive information with that regards on the personal side. And definitely passwords, right? They're always forever hackers trying to get your credentials and your banking information so they can steal your money. And the second thing you want to try to do is avoid being compromised, right? Compromise means they pretty much own some of your accounts. They have control of your computer. They could do some pretty nasty things. So that's the objectives for cybersecurity awareness. So some of the attacks, this is the most popular, right? Which is social engineering. This is where they're trying to trick you, trying to fool you into making you believe that there's someone else or some other entity, some other company, in getting you to give them sensitive information, right? Or the other thing that they may want to try to do is get you to click on something and do a malicious action. So there's a couple of ways that they do this impersonation. One, and some of you may have received a lot, both of these, a phone call claiming that they're from IT, claiming they're from a different company, claiming they're from the bank. We get these phone calls all the time, right? The second one is email. That's the easiest way because they don't have to talk to you on the phone. And so they may have a different accent, a different thing, so they can't do it over the phone, but through email, you don't know who you're talking to. And last but not least, the hackers may have more information on you than you think, right? They may have gotten it from social media. They may have gotten it from another individual, a compromised website that's got a lot of your information on there. So always be careful. They may be saying various different things on those phone calls or emails that make you believe that, you know, they know you and they're potentially someone else. Phishing. So this is where you receive the emails, and we get phished probably pretty much every day. There's an email coming in with various different subjects, very different contacts, trying to impersonate another entity. And their whole goal is to get information. They're trying to harvest that information. So what are some of the things that you can detect these emails, right? Well, first of all, the attacker needs to interact with you. So they're going to send you that email, and they're going to potentially have a link in that website to log in. Nowadays, since we deal a lot with Office 365 or Google, they're sending you these fake links that look like you have to log into your Office 365 account or your Gmail account. And then at that point, you're actually entering your password and your username in the clear, and it's getting stored in their database. So one thing you don't want to do is definitely do not reply to emails with sensitive information as a password. I work in cybersecurity, I work in IT. I will never ask you guys for your password in an email because I can reset your password. I don't need to know your password. I can get in through various different other means, administrative tasks. So there's absolutely no way anyone from IT should ever ask you for your password. Never give your password out. And a lot of these phishing emails, they work on a sense of urgency, right? They're creating that sense of urgency. Fear is a big one. Greed, curiosity, and even empathy, right? So sometimes they'll say, hey, I saw you in this video. And that's the curious side of us, right? So we'll go and click that link because I want to say, hey, what was I doing? But it's in most cases not even you, and they're just trying to get you to click in that fictitious link to potentially do various different things. Here's an example of a phishing email. Right here, you know, looking at this email, nothing's ever for free. There's absolutely no way someone's going to give you $1 million like that. And they wouldn't be doing it through email. And see, the one thing that's in this email is click here to deposit. That link is probably bringing you to a page that's going to ask you for your banking information and stuff like that. It's not always as obvious as this. They're getting really creative. So we'll go through a few more examples later. So always be on the lookout, be vigilant, right? Is the email coming from a trusted individual? Is it coming from a trusted partner, a trusted organization or company, right? And there's three things you want to focus on the email. Who is actually sending that information? And you get that from the from, right? Up at the top of the email. Every time I get an email, I look at the from. If that email looks really weird, and I'll show you some examples of weirdness, I do not, that email goes into the trash can right away. The other two things are context and content, right? The context is, should I even be receiving such an email, right? The other one is the content. What's in the email? Does it even make any sense, right? Does it go with the context? Does it even go with the person's actually sending it to me? So give you an example. And this is a live example. It's happened last week with a client, a scientist who has nothing to do with software applications. He gets an email from a hacker portraying them to be QuickBooks. If people don't know QuickBooks, it's a financial application. So he's a scientist, has nothing to do with QuickBooks or software. He decides that, oh, there's no link in there, but there's a phone number. I'm going to call that number. So he calls the number. The person tells them, yeah, you owe us money for your QuickBooks subscription, yada, yada, yada. And they get him to enter a URL into the browser, right? So they type in, they go to a website. He gets to a website, looks like QuickBooks. It tells him to download something. He downloads the file. They ask him to run it. He runs the file. Next thing you know, he's compromised. At that point, that's when he starts getting suspicious, and then he hangs up. He forwards the email to finance, who should have been the ones he should have forwarded to right away because they deal with it, or he should have sent it to me, who deals with subscriptions. So first thing is he didn't check the from. Second thing is the context wasn't there, and the content made absolutely no sense. It wasn't even coming from QuickBooks. So those are things that you have to look out: sender information, context, and content. Email spoofing. So a lot of times they're going to try to pretend that there's someone in your organization. So they'll put the first name and last name of that person, because that part of the email can always be changed. And then they'll link that to their own personal email that they may have created just for this attack. Because anyone can create a Gmail account, an iCloud account, a Hotmail account. But people get focused on the first name and last name. And that's the last, I don't look at that thing. I look at what is the @ right? So it should be kim.edwards@k2esec.com. Now that makes sense. I know Kim works for K2E Security. That makes sense. If it's Kim Edwards at it's Kim Edwards space gobbledygoo@acme.com, that's not good, right? So you always want to look at that from. Suspicious emails always come, or I shouldn't say always, sometimes come from undisclosed lists. So if you're not seeing a list and it's all BCC, blind copy carbon, then it's basically probably a mass email sent to a lot of people, hoping that one out of you will click on this link. And other suspicious email services, right? Any free email services are always kind of suspicious, especially if they're portraying to be from a company. Why would the person be sending me from their Gmail? They should be sending it from their company domain. So let's break this down a bit. So if you look at the first from, it says payroll@publicmailservice.com. If I work for the Air Cadet League, why would the Air Cadet League payroll have a different email than @Air Cadet League Canada, right? It doesn't exist. So first of all, that's very suspicious to me. They're looking for a payment deposit, right? Oh, they want to send me money. Why do they want to send me money? It makes no sense, right? I didn't do anything, and I don't even work in sales, right? So these are all the things that you have to look for to try to understand what's going on here. And because there's a link in this email, I'm pretty sure they're going to try to get my password and my user ID. Because once they get my password and user ID, they can do other malicious things, right? So some of the questions, I kind of went through them a bit, right? Should this email sender be sending it to me? No. Do they already have this information? They probably should. If they're my payroll, they already know where to transfer my money to. So right there, that makes no sense. Were you expecting this request? Nope. Is what they're asking logical? It makes absolutely no sense. I don't know what they're talking about commissions. And this email shows very little effort by the sender, right? There's no context. There's nothing for this. And you look for grammatical mistakes. Always hover over the link and be careful when downloading stuff. And that big statement at the bottom, never give out your password. That should be if you get something out of this presentation, never give out your password. So let's look at another one here, right? So there it is, Pierre Cadets 9. Why would Pierre Forex be sending me an email with some other public mail service? It makes absolutely no sense, right? And once again, he's looking for updating the banking records. So they want to try to confirm this. This is definitely not Pierre. What you should do in this case, when you look at it, do all the tests that I tell you, and you know for sure it's not correct. You should then contact Pierre and say, hey, there's some spoofing going on. They're trying to pretend you. You can even send him an example of the email so that potentially he may look through his filters to try to see if he can warn people of this attack. And more things you're seeing from other companies is this EXT. So they'll tag the subject line for internal email with that's showing that it's coming from the external and it's not coming from an internal domain. And that warning too in yellow, they also do stuff like that to try to captivate you to say, hey, this is coming from the outside, not inside. Okay, so this is a good one of mine, is to click or not to click. Always hover over the links, right? This link is actually very good. It kind of looks very suspicious, but this one is a very good site. If you, I'm pretty sure Pierre's gonna show you these slides or share these slides. Go to that website. Have I been pawned is how it reads. And it's a legitimate site. Enter your email and it'll tell you if you have compromised passwords. And if you have a compromised password, you can actually change it. They also have another link that says, enter your password and we'll see if it's in the database. If it's in the database, then you should be changing that password. If your password has any word in it, like common words like password, you definitely do not have a strong password. But the main part of this is hover over the link. When you hover over the link, it usually goes to like you see in the screen in the window to the bottom left. And you can see what the actual real link is, just in case they're trying to pretend that they're a different site. When in doubt, just do not click. So inspecting links. So when you look at this one, right? Does this site look good? Yes. Everything that I've highlighted there is irrelevant. You don't start looking there. You start looking at the other part. You start looking at the first slash. So where you see paypal.com, that first slash is what you look for. And you look for the two words to the left of it. So in this case, that first slash, it's paypal.com. Paypal.com, valid site, valid company, that's their domain, right? The next one, does it look legit? Yeah, it's got paypal.com, but what you have to do is look before the first slash, and the first slash says it's .cn, so that's China, and it's sales-by. So they can create these subdomains because they own the sales-by.cn domain. And they could put paypal.com in there that makes it look like a valid site, but it actually isn't. The other thing you want to do is look for numbers that are replacing letters. In this one, it looks like the royalbank.com is legit, but if you put that in a text editor, you'll see that it's clearly a 0 and not an O. So you always be careful. And when in doubt, just type in or Google search Royal Bank and you'll get the real link and go to the link yourself and enter your stuff. I try to avoid clicking on links when possible, but if it's the bank actually sending me something and it redirects me to another page, then I sometimes have no choice. Okay, so this one is interesting. And we see a lot of these. Now, you guys may be most of you are on an Office 365 platform, but some of your firms that you work for may be on Google, but it's all the same concepts. They make the email look like it's coming from Microsoft or Office or Google. They put the icons in there to make it look pretty. And if I look at this email, the from, first thing I do is look at the from. You may not see that subtle mistake, but there's definitely a mistake in that from. This one's a little more creative. It's targeted. They're usually not as complicated as this. It's usually a lot simpler. It's a lot of garbage in that from, and you know it's not coming from the aircadetleague.com. This one, you see it's missing a U. But regardless, say we get fooled by this one. What's the next test? Let's check the content and context. So this email is telling me my password's going to expire in 2 days. But the next line says, keep your current password. Why would I want to keep my current password if they're telling me my password's expiring? Why would they even send me this email? There's absolutely no reason for them to send me, your password's expiring, but if you want to keep it, click here, and then it'll force you to enter your password again. But why would you have to enter your password? You're keeping the same password. So always look for things like that. And if you hovered over that link, you would see the bottom left, I've got this in the screenshot. It says aircadet.copy.password.cn. So the first slash password.cn. That is not a Microsoft.com domain. It's not office.com. It's definitely nothing to do with Microsoft. Passwords. Now, too many times, a lot of people, because I do sometimes crack passwords for clients, and most times I can crack 40% of the passwords in the first hour, and then after a day, I probably get another 5%. Other than that, there's 55% passwords that may not be the most difficult, but they're a little harder to crack. But let's just say 40% of people are using very, very simple passwords. If your password is not 12 characters or longer, your password will be hacked in less than an hour. It's just the way it goes today. The compute power is so fast. There's a lot of compromised passwords out there. We do some hashing checks. We compare the databases. We will get your password within an hour. And now you're going to say, well, I can't remember a 12-character password. Most systems, they want an uppercase, lowercase, use numbers, symbols. So I'll go through another slide that'll give you some good examples on how you can actually make that a little easier. I'm not a big fan of random passwords because now you're forcing, especially if we're getting into 12 characters. If you do a random password, there's absolutely no way you're going to remember it unless you type it 100 times, and you're going to write it down. So I prefer if you didn't write it down and you use some of the techniques in this awareness to come up with better passwords. The other thing you should be, and it should be mandatory, you should do this. If you don't have it today, I would do it tonight, tomorrow. Get multi-factor authentication on your emails. So if you're using Gmail, even your personal emails, if you're using Gmail or Office or Hotmail or Office 365, turn on multi-factor authentication. Because if your password's compromised, they still need the second factor to get in, right? So if they don't have your phone and they don't have that token, there's absolutely no way they can get in. So one thing that's been happening is, and I get this at clients and I train them all the time, is if you get a multi-factor push notification or request to your phone and you didn't do anything, you weren't expecting it, you don't just blindly approve it, you deny it. You have to, say reject, because that could mean that your password's compromised and someone's trying to fool, get you to commit to the two-factor, because as soon as they get in once, they're going to go in there and change that two-factor and lock you out of your account.
Question, Kim, from Teresa. Any hints on how to manage the number of passwords one needs to have? There's so many sites need unique passwords, each slightly different, while still be cyber secure.
Yeah, if you can hold on to that question, because we will talk about it. It's called password vaults. It's coming up in a couple of slides, I believe, but for sure, I'll address that question. So here's good passwords, and you think it looks difficult, but if you type this in a few times, you'll remember it pretty fast. I'm a big fan now of, I should probably update this slide, of only capitalizing one of those words. So I'll do the whole word capitalized, right? So whether it be the first, the second, the third, doesn't matter. I'll have one word all in caps. Then it makes it a little simpler that I know, okay, one of my words is capitalized. I don't need to know it's the third letter or the first letter. That gets a little too complicated. And I always put a number in front of the capitalized word, right? Wherever that be, not in the middle of this one. So 3 English words are fine. It's great. It's impossible for a hacker to discover this distress plasma A-bomb. There's no way they're going to get that. It's too many words, and the hacking technology is not there to uncover those. The next one too is pretty good. Where you're going to have really bad passwords, and I told you this one, which is password. And if you think that changing dollar signs for the S's, or changing the O for a 0, or changing the I for a 1, or changing the E for a 3 is good, it's not. That's the first thing I do in my software. It's called Leet Language. I change all those possible letters that people revert, and I try every English word. So I would get password 1 in next to no time. The next one, cadets. You never take a password that's in your business, right? So if you work for cadets, you shouldn't have plane, cadets, air. That should not form part of your password. Memorable dates should not, like your birthday should not be in there. Your wife's birthday should not be in there. Your husband's birthday should not be in there. Your marriage should not be in there. Your kid's name should not be in there. Anything memorable, because guess what? They're getting all that information on social media, right? Oh, that's their kid, right? That's the name of their child. And their child looks like their birthday is on this day because, it's displayed. Happy birthday, happy birthday. So definitely you have to kind of create randomness. So you use 3 disjunct words that make absolutely no sense. Like cats or ants eat cats. It's not possible, right? Ants do not eat cats. So 3 disjunct words that make absolutely no sense. Okay, so what to avoid? So dictionary words are good. Single dictionary words are not good. You have to have at least 2 words in there. Writing down your passwords. Big, big no-no. And I know it's hard to remember, and that question from Teresa is on the right-hand side. I'll go through some of those examples. User IDs, names, location, birthdays, technical words that have to do with your business. Reverse spelling words, another faux pas. It looks secure, but it's not. Reusing passwords for everything. So if you have one password for all your websites, that is not good at all. Because if one of those websites gets compromised, all your websites have the same password. Sharing your password. That's definitely a big no-no as well. Never, ever share your password. Passwords are unique to you. You never give them out. So what to do? Combination of words for sure. And to solve the mystery of so many passwords, and trust me, I have, many clients. So I have passwords galore. I have way more passwords than anyone can think of. And I have a different password for each app for each client. So I have a lot of passwords. And I'm a Mac Apple user, so I use one password. But there's other solutions out there. Bitwarden is another good one. There's been a lot of compromise on LastPass. It's not one that I can recommend anymore. They've gotten stronger, but it's just, if you've had LastPass for the last 10 years, you should probably go and reset all your passwords in LastPass, because they've had some recent attacks, and the technology when they first came out was not very strong on how they encrypted the passwords in there. Plus their backend database has been compromised through the backups. So if you weren't using very strong passwords, or you did it when it first came out, your best bet is to reset all your passwords in LastPass. That's why I don't recommend it anymore. Your better options are Bitwarden or 1Password. And it makes your life a lot easier too when you have a good one. Because if you put the website, as soon as you go to the website, it will autofill your password and your user ID. So you're not even typing your password. It just automatically fills in there. So that's why password managers are great. They're secure, and they make your life a lot easier because it's auto-filling everything. Hopefully that answers the question. I see another question there, Pierre, or is that the same one?
No, that was just a comment from Maddie Christine saying she loves 1Password.
Okay. Was that before or after?
I think when the slide came up, she
Oh,
loved,
okay.
yeah.
I was just wondering if she was answering the previous question early. Good stuff. Yeah, 1Password's great. Love it too.
Yeah, we use LastPass at work, and I guess tomorrow I'm going to start changing passwords or switching to 1Password.
Yeah, it's been compromised, but when a company gets compromised, they get stronger. It's just, if you've had it for such a long time, better off to start changing all your passwords. Change your master password for sure. Malware. So, we've talked a lot about credential harvesting. Well, they can also install malicious software on your computer. And at that point, they can maybe get access to a keylogger, which will actually start recording all your keystrokes. So you have to be very, very vigilant and careful that you're not downloading some sort of malicious software. And the number one that people are getting fooled by nowadays is the last one there, which is ransomware. And what this will actually do, if you get this, you're in trouble, because it'll encrypt all your files on your hard drive. And then when you go to open up your Word document or something, it'll say, this file is encrypted, contact this email for the ransom, right? And you send that person the email, and they'll say, yeah, the ransom for you is X amount of dollars. You send it to this email, and I'll give you the unlocking key. All right, so that's the one you're trying to avoid the most, is that last one, because it's the one that's going to cost you. The first one's Trojans. This is where they're hidden to look like a different app, but they're actually not that, and it's actually malicious code. You can get infected by just visiting a website. You don't even have to do anything. You just have to go to that site and you get infected, right? There's also browser hijacking. So you go to a website, and that website can then get control of your browser. And the macro virus, that's been around forever, but it's when you open a Word document or an Excel document, and it's got a virus in there that's going to be doing things such as downloading files or doing other various things, communicating out to the internet. So something you really don't want to get on your computer. So infection methods, right? Obviously, number one is attachments, and the other one is links, right? That's why when I said to click or not to click, very important that you hover over those emails or those links, and you check the validity of those emails. If they're really long before that first slash and a lot of randomness, 100% not good. And there are websites out there that you can actually take that URL and load it up to a site, like VirusTotal is one. I didn't put in the slide, probably should put it in for the next time. VirusTotal, if you Google that, you'll find it. You can put a URL in there. It'll tell you if it's malicious or not. Clicking on ads, right? Opening those attachments. Social media is a big one, right? Where I don't know how many times I get Facebook emails from friends, and I know right away, as soon as I get that email, I say, oh, they're infected. And I'll email them. I won't reply to that email. I'll email them and say, hey, you probably want to change your password. I'm pretty sure your email is compromised. And what ends up happening is, your friend from Facebook will say, hey, click now to watch this. But there's no context. If it was a true friend, they'd give you some context to that video. Unpatched software. A lot of people do not patch their applications. They don't even patch Windows. They may not patch their MacBook. You always have to get those updates. You have to take them, you reboot. Windows is getting better because they kind of ram them down your throat. They'll force them down, and eventually you'll get them and they'll reboot. But if you're dealing with a very, very old version of Windows, that may not be true. Avoid downloading unofficial software, right? Or media from other websites. Pirated movies. That's kind of old though, because a lot of people don't pirate any. They don't download movies. They kind of stream. So, but if there's still people out there doing it, be careful for those. So some of the malware impacts, the biggest one I would say is stealing the passwords and data, right? Next one would be probably the last one, encrypts your files. Very rare do they take over your computer, because when they do take over the computer, they probably want to be stealth, and you probably won't even know they're on your computer. So the biggest one where they'll take over your computer is when they've encrypted all your files, but then you obviously know that someone has infected that computer. Start spamming your contacts. If they start spamming your contacts, pretty much, yeah, you've got malicious stuff on your machine. So some of the things that may be occurring and it could be just you have a very, very old computer. Does not necessarily mean you have a computer virus, right? Is if your computer starts crashing a lot or you have it's very slow, that may be a sign that it's old. It may be a sign that your disk is having issues, but it also may be a sign if you have that you have a computer virus. But there may be other signs that will show up with the slowness and the crashes, which are Windows popping up randomly. Your home page is not what you set it to. It keeps on redirecting to another home page, right? If you look at your send box, you got emails being sent out and you don't even know what they are, right? Programs starting and you didn't even invoke them. Or if you're getting notices that your passwords are changing, right? So a lot of services will send, hey, your password changed. If you didn't do this, you better log in and fix this. Malware protection. So the only prevention you have, if you already have the ransomware, the only way to mitigate that after the fact is you have to have backups. Otherwise, if you don't have backups, your information is not in the cloud or on some other form of storage, you definitely need to pay the ransom or live with not having that data recovered, right? Those are your two options. But if you have backups, you don't have to pay the ransom. You just restore your data, reimage your machine, and you should be up and running. Update your devices, right? When you update software, it's actually fixing vulnerabilities. So if you do go to like say I was on a browser with a very, very old Chrome version, right? And it had a vulnerability and I go to an infected web page, I could get compromised. But if I keep my Chrome browser up to date or my Edge browser up to date all the time, then it reduces the chances that I can get infected by going to a website. Last but not least, you definitely want to install some form of anti-malware software. In the old days, we used to call it antivirus. It's all pretty much the same. You need something that's going to detect suspicious behaviors, right? Detect that, hey, why are all my files starting to be encrypted? The best one out there is CrowdStrike, but it's costly. It costs money. If you can pay for it, go for it. If not, Windows Defenders works on the Mac OS. It does come embedded. You don't have to do anything on the Mac OS. It's already in there. It's called XProtect. Windows usually by default comes enabled, but if you go in there to the settings and you see that it is not enabled, it may be a sign that you have malware. Because the malware, first thing it's going to try to do is turn off the anti-malware. Do not download software from an official or trusted source. And on the concept of installing anti-malware software, a lot of websites that you go to may pretend that you have a virus. They'll come up and once again, they're going back to one of those sense of urgencies. They're attacking your fear. They'll come up with a fictitious list of malware that you have on your computer. And they'll say, click here to buy the software that'll remove that malware or protect you going forward. It's called scareware. It is not true. Your machine doesn't have a virus and the website's not ever going to do it. You would need install anti-malware software on your machine, run it to see if you actually do have malware. But if you're doing it from a website, just ignore it, close that browser session, and do not click or call or pay for that fictitious anti-malware software.
Couple of questions, Kim. If some form of malicious intrusion is suspected, can Spybot help to remove?
Spybot, that's a good one. I don't know Spybot per se, so I would definitely have to research that one to see if Spybot is malicious software itself. It probably isn't. So I would say yes, but I would definitely have to do some reviews. And if you guys want, your best option is to do Spybot scam, right? Spybot hoax, Spybot malware, to see if there's reviews out there of people saying that this is malicious software. When I don't know software, that's the first thing I try to do is see what other people are saying about this software to see if it's reputable software versus potentially another piece of malicious code. But Spybot, let's assume Spybot is something that can clean up your computer. It more likely will not effectively clean up everything depending on what it is. I can do it because I'm in IT. I reimage my machine. If there's a virus, any of my clients get a virus, I tell them right away, your machine's getting reimaged because I don't know what else may be there. So Spybot may remove half of them and may leave the other half on. Some of the malware gets so deep rooted that it's next to impossible to clean up. You pretty much have to reimage. Reimaging is the safest option, but it's not for everyone because not everyone knows how to recover from that, right?
Okay, another question from Mandy. Do you suggest one browser over the other, Chrome or Edge, for safer internet use?
So Edge is Chrome, right? So Edge is based off what's called Chromium. So to me, Edge or Chrome are pretty much the same browser. Definitely wouldn't use Internet Explorer anymore. That one's pretty much dead. But if you have a really old computer, I would install Chrome or Edge, one of the two on there. For sure, they're good. Firefox is another good one. You use any of those three and you're fine. And you can also get like these ad links software that you can get that you go into the browser. Geez, I wish I remember the names of them. I think one's AdBlock, and you put that in, and basically what ends up happening is it blocks a lot of your ad sites, so you're not even seeing some of these potential harmful third-party ads.
What are
And
your
your page, and your pages load faster. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Norton antivirus?
Okay, so I've been in this business a long time. Norton was really, really good back in the day. Until they start changing, and I haven't looked at them probably for a couple of years, until they start going more towards a attack type framework, right? Like CrowdStrike, they detect anomalous behavior. They do some signature detection, but they don't do a lot of it. A lot of it is, oh, you downloaded a file from the internet. Oh, and this file just executed. This file is starting to copy files here. Those are the kind of behaviors that they'll detect on and they'll block. While Norton is doing signature detection. McAfee is the same way. They do have some heuristics parts to it, but it's not their forte. They're not strong like a CrowdStrike or other vendors that do more behavior type, attack type frameworks. And signatures, all the hackers do is they morph their code or their application so that the signature no longer works. So it's kind of a race game that Norton and McAfee have to come up with new signatures to fight those new attacks. Versus, well, even if you change any part of the code, you're still doing the same concepts, right? So CrowdStrike, if you change the code, it's going to have the same behaviors. It's still going to block it.
And another, yes.
They're coming in hot.
They're coming in. We have two questions on the same topic. What about using a VPN like NordVPN?
Yeah, NordVPN. I actually have NordVPN, and we're going to talk about it a bit later. Not NordVPN per se, but definitely, and it's a good segue into this, the public Wi-Fi and hotspots. I will not connect to a airport Wi-Fi or a hotel Wi-Fi without having a VPN turned on, right? So yes, NordVPN, highly recommended. When you're at home, you don't need to have it on, right? But when you're in these public Wi-Fi hotspots, for sure. Was there another question?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. So kind of talked a bit about it. The hotspots, be careful. When you're on your computer, if you have a Windows computer and you see an antenna looking, so when you want to connect to a Wi-Fi hotspot, it looks like an antenna. If it looks like a computer, It literally, the icon looks like a computer. Do not ever connect to that. So that's someone like me with a MacBook turning my MacBook into a hotspot. I'm hoping that you connect to my MacBook so that I can intercept all your traffic and potentially get sensitive information. So when you're connecting to that hotspot, make sure it looks like an antenna and not a computer. And I don't do this. So if anyone's concerned, I don't turn my computer into a hotspot. I just know that you can do it, and that's how you get sensitive information. And once again, love the suggestion on the NordVPN. If you have a lot of travel and you're connecting to a lot of these public hotspots, invest in a NordVPN or some other personal VPN solution, because that'll encrypt your traffic from end to end across the wireless network. One thing I like to do is I don't like to auto connect to Wi-Fi unless it's my home. So if it's my home or like a company one that I automatically always connect to. But if I go to the airport, I uncheck the auto connect because I do not want to connect to that hotspot again, right? So if I call, what hackers can do is call it call their fictitious hotspot the same name as the airport, right? The same, what they call is the identifier, which is the SSID, and to try to trick my computer into auto connecting to it. So it's always good to have the auto connect for your Wi-Fi disabled unless you're connecting to your home Wi-Fi. One thing that you should always avoid doing is using HTTP websites. There always should be that S with that lock icon beside it, right? With no errors. Especially if you're putting in your user ID and password. If the website isn't HTTPS, which I'd be very surprised nowadays, you definitely do not want to go there. But it could also be a sign that you're being fooled into going to a fake website that's trying to harvest your credentials. So always use HTTPS. But most hackers will use HTTPS too. But it's just if I do HTTP on my network, anyone that's listening on my network can actually see the password in the clear. That's the reason why you always use HTTPS.
Okay, so we got a couple more questions, Kim. So I think it's maybe more of a statement than a question, but should we conclude that VPN, we should be using that on our mobile devices and our phones?
That's a good one. I have an iOS, so I'm not afraid. But if I had an Android, I would probably do that solution that someone recommended for sure, having the VPN on my phone. The reason I don't do it for the Apple devices is because their technology on the sandboxing, an app can't go outside of its own little sandbox, we'll call it for a better word, is a lot safer than the architecture of the Android, right? So those are your two leading platforms, Android and iOS. So if I have an Android, I would get a VPN. If I'm on an iPhone, I would leave it as is.
As a follow-up, I guess this is from Jimmy. He's thinking using Microsoft 365 on phones. So if you're going to use Microsoft 365 on your phone, presumably to pass files around, then you'd want to, and you're not on an iPhone, then you'd want to potentially have the VPN.
Yeah, so I don't want to give a bad rap on Android. It depends what you have with your Android. If your Android is kind of going to untrusted sites, right? You rooted it, right? Definitely you're in malicious kind of or high risk territory. If you just get your phone and you're just a regular user and it's not rooted, it's not going to untrusted sites for applications. If you're just going to the Google App Store, you're probably fine without the VPN. So I don't want to scare people and saying, oh yeah, you got Office 365 on that Android that you should do it. It all depends what you're doing with your phone, right? Same thing can apply for the Apple, right? If you've jailbroken that phone, you fall now into that high risk category and you should probably have that VPN. First of all, you shouldn't jailbreak it. and you shouldn't root your Android phone. It's just not worth it, right?
Another question on CrowdStrike. Can it be run alongside Norton and Defender?
Ooh, that's a good one. Typically, they don't work well together with the multiple levels because they tie in really low into the operating system that they will not work, right? So they're really telling the OS saying, "Hey, I'm the anti-malware." So I'm pretty sure if you try to install CrowdStrike, it would say we're going to uninstall Norton.
Okay. And if what do you think of, I'm not sure I'm going to say this right, Totalva antivirus, if you've heard of it?
Don't know them.
Oh,
So if I haven't heard of them, not doesn't mean they're not good, but just they're not up on the top, right?
okay, no more questions for now.
Okay, so firewalls and VPNs. You should have your firewall on at all times on both Windows and the Mac. You should also, like I said, use VPNs if you're in public open hotspots, right? And there's not much else to say on this, but firewalls do prevent you from getting potentially attacked from the outside. The Mac has the firewall. The Mac also has full disk encryption, so you should probably turn on what's called FileVault for the Mac. And on the Windows, you should probably turn on BitLocker. But if you're using Home Edition, pretty sure there is no BitLocker on Home Edition, but maybe they've added it. I don't know. I don't deal a lot with Home. I only install Windows 10 Pro. So if you have Windows 10 Pro on your Windows or Windows 11, see if you can enable BitLocker, which is full disk encryption.
It's a bit of a technical question. What about a firewall on the router as opposed to on your computer?
Yeah, it's different levels, right? I like to apply security at multiple layers. So if that one layer fails, my last resort is my endpoint. So for sure, firewall on the router, very first point of defense. If the attackers get through that firewall, then my last defense is my firewall on my PC. Windows has one. It's there. You just have to configure it properly.
Okay, thank you.
File sharing. So this kind of applies a lot for the cadets because you do share documents, you do share potential cadet email lists with personal information on there. So if you have an organization email, then use it. Obviously, if you don't, because I know we're all a bunch of volunteers and we don't necessarily have Office 365. Sure, you can use your personal account, but definitely try to avoid your personal account for anything, especially if you have an organizational account. For sharing files, it's not very good to send it in an email as an attachment. You're better off and more secure to store it on OneDrive, so that's in Office 365, or Google Drive, SharePoint, one of those services, and share the link in your email. Because if your email gets compromised, people can't download the files on there. Typically, if it's a link, someone clicks on the link and they need an account to log into to get the document. So links in emails way more secure than attachments in emails. Always try to use the link method. Talked about anti-malware, enable firewalls, this is all for file sharing. Share files to people who are trusted or in the same organization, right? So if you're not recognizing an email and they're asking for something, do not share that information. You really, really need to know who that is coming from or who's requesting the information. And when in doubt, if you were to say, if you think it's Pierre Forbes and you share him a link, if it is an attacker, he would not be able to log in anyway. That's another good reason why to use the link versus attaching the file. When you attach the file, it's automatic, it's in that email. Whoever gets that email has access to the information. USB keys, definitely easy to lose, definitely easy to steal. So if you have to store private information, sensitive information, you should be using an encrypted USB key. They're not very expensive. You don't have to go and get the real hardware ones that are hardware encrypted. You can get cheaper ones that use software. And if that key gets lost, you're not concerned because everything on that key is encrypted. USB keys are also like concerning. So if I give you a USB key and you plug it into your machine, it is potential that there's malicious software on there. So if you ever find a USB key, definitely, unless you're a security savvy or an expert, I wouldn't be touching that USB key at all. So some of those risks of file sharing is exposing sensitive information, installing malicious code, or also you give accidental permissions to more than what you want. So on a recap, always inspect your emails, right? Make sure those links, hover over those links, use a good password, use words, random passwords, use something that's 12 characters or longer. And if you want to remember it or you want to use a password vault, that's what you should be doing. Inspect those links by inspecting, like I showed you, the first slash, the 2 words, hovering over it, making sure that it is a clean link. Anything that has attached, be careful when you're downloading it or opening it. If it looks kind of weird, looks like an exe, do not touch it. Always download stuff from official sources. Like, so if you're getting Office 365, make sure you're getting that from Microsoft, is a good example. Beware of public Wi-Fi and hotspots. Only use HTTPS. Consider an anti-malware, antivirus application, a VPN such as NordVPN. Make sure your software is being updated regularly. And when I say regularly, probably once a month. And if you can't do that, it's too much, then at least do it like 3-4 times a year. And make sure your device settings are secure. One good example is make sure that auto connect is disabled. I think that is it, Pierre, and we're pretty much close to the time. Any other questions?
Yes, John, one just came in. Any free VPN that you would recommend?
Oh, I don't think any of them are free anymore. They may give you like 3 months free at first and then they charge, but very doubtful that there are free VPNs out there. They're
And
relatively not expensive, and especially if you can, you first sign up, it's usually cheaper. And then if you want to move to another site that is cheaper, then you can also do that as well.
that was from Christian who asked also, have you heard of VPN Book?
Nope.
No. We'll give folks a couple of minutes to, if they can think of other questions. While we do that, I'd like to just let everybody know that the presentation tonight was recorded and will be posted on the national website. So if your colleagues were unable to attend, they're welcome to log in on the website and have a look at the video. And we'll also post a copy of the slides in case you want to check on some of the links, the sites that Kim was talking about. Ron just asked, do you recommend AVG?
Yeah, I've used AVG in the past. It's a good one. But once again, it's going back to the category of signature detection. So I haven't looked at it in a while, so maybe they're more on the heuristics, but they came out like Norton and McAfee, right?
Good.
So
Okay,
Pierre,
so
I forgot one thing. I was gonna do a quick demo. Do we still have a bit of time, like 1 minute or 2 minutes?
sure, yeah.
Just give me a sec here. It's on the link side of things again. There. Okay, so I get this email, right? The title is kind of bogus, right? I know it's coming from external, and the link says it's CNN.com. What you see in the text is not what's necessarily the link behind it. What you see visually is just text. And as a hacker, I can put whatever I want. So this website looks like CNN.com. So what is the first thing we want to do is hover over that link, and hopefully you can see it in the bottom left of this window is the true link. When you hover over it, it puts that link. So when I click on this link, I know I'm going to tsn.ca, right? So that's just one little thing I wanted to show why it's so important. Even though the text is showing you what you think is the link, you still have to hover over that link. That was my quick demo.
Great. Follow-up from Mohammed. He says, I misspelt the antivirus. My question was for TOATAL AV, total AV.
Oh, Total AV.
Yeah.
Yeah, still, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. And one final question before we'll let you go, Kim. I am also work in the IT security field. It's not a question, comment, a fan. Great presentation. a good, a good, good. Thank you, Maria, and the comments are coming in from everybody. I think it was indeed a very enjoyable presentation. Lots of good stuff in there. You would think that maybe recurring presentations on the same topic every year would not be value added, but I got to tell you, I learned something every year, and and it's great way to spend an hour great investment to spend an hour and protect yourself against the threat. So thank you all again for your participation tonight, and thanks again, Kim, for accepting to do this for us. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. Great questions.